Ladies, thanks for coming out tonight. Before we really get into it, could you, starting with Teresa, give me your full name, please?
Yes, Teresa Segretti Derringer.
And how do you spell the middle name?
Sagrati. Segrate.
Bene, molto bene.
Si.
Okay.
Michelle Ann Page is my full name.
Well, thanks for joining us. What attracted you to the Unitarian Church, and when did you become active?
Well, let's see, my husband and I were both raised very Catholic. He was going to be a priest, I was going to be a nun. And
You're serious?
I'm very serious. And our first date, we talked about existentialism, and it was so romantic. And so we decided that we were both leaving the Catholic Church and wanted to find a church that very much was a lived gospel, that the principles were, you walked and you talked the religion. And the Unitarian Church was such a direct expression of how we wanted to live our lives. So we joined the Unitarian Church and got married in the Unitarian Church in 1983.
And was that here in Salt Lake City?
In Boise, Idaho, the Unitarian Fellowship.
So when did you come down to Salt Lake City?
In 1990, and was accepted to the University of Utah Physical Therapy School. So we've been here since 1990 and been members since, I think, 92.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So what brought you into the church?
What brought us in? So both my wife and I, Sue and I, were both raised Mormon, and had some very negative experiences around that, particularly me, even though she was much more anti-Mormon than I was. And we have 2 children, and when they were young, I really wanted to get involved in some kind of religious connection. And so I had heard a lot about the Unitarian Church. I ended up having a child dedication service with my son, Ethan, who is 21 now, at South Valley Unitarian Church. And that was all we did. Didn't do anything until Grayson was born. And then I had been trying to get Sue to attend the Salt Lake Unitarian Church. And I finally persuaded her to come once, then twice. So anyway, we had her child dedication in January of 2006. And we have been members shortly after that time.
What keeps you active in the church? What is the appeal?
Yes. For me, it is the sermons, the like-minded community. And I think what brings the like-minded community together is the values that we have. And it fits absolutely with who I am and how I want to live my life. And so it's just the perfect fit. I never thought I would be involved in any type of organized religion after I left the Mormon Church, but this is definitely my home.
Is it that organized?
No. Well, yes, it is. We're very organized. We have a lot of volunteers who are very committed and very organized. If we didn't organize around a lot of things, we would not be sustained. But in terms of the religious portion, I would say that part is not so organized. It's, whatever you would like to believe and do believe is certainly welcome, but that's the other appeal, is there's no specific dogma. It's just about how to live a good quality, wonderful, equal, everyone being the same and everyone mattering and giving back to those who have less than we do. And I think everyone's focused on that. And so the dogma doesn't really matter because we all care about humanity, and that's what it's about for me.
A moment ago you used the word sustain. And the reason you're here today, both of you, is because you're deeply involved with the sustenance of First Unitarian Church in Salt Lake City. So Teresa, let's look at you for a moment. Mm-hmm. You've been involved for several years in a major fundraising event. Tell us about that.
Well, the auction has been around forever, and probably for about 4 or 5 years, so starting maybe the early 2000s. I would volunteer day of, we would donate things to the auction, we'd go to the auction. But in 2009, Ed, my husband, was president of the board, and they were looking for an auction chair. And he volunteered me. And my very good friend Barbara Pence and I, we took on the challenge as co-chairs. And it has been such a wonderful experience. So, I'm really a Unitarian for the parties, and the auction is like a party with a purpose. So to me, that's the perfect spot for me. And so, 2009, we do this Fairly Free Thinker Award, which had started several years before. And Tim DeChristopher, who is the environmentalist, who was a member of our church, we had him as our Fairly Free Thinker Award. And our theme was Raise Your Hand, because he was the famous bitter 70 that raised his hand. And so we had him come and had his Pat Shea, his attorney, give the introduction. And it was just, the committee was so much fun to hang out with. We acquired all these different donations from companies and from people, and we put them together in all these baskets, and I just remember my whole house being full of cellophane, and it just was so much fun. So, and then the purpose is to, as Sue said, or Michelle, sustain the church. And so it's a win-win.
So I got involved in the auction fairly recently. It was early spring of 2017, and I was at Teresa and Ed's home for another church meeting, which I do not recall what it was, but after about 3 glasses of wine, someone said, well, we are looking for a chair for the auction for this year, and I raised my hand and said, I'll do it. And Teresa ran over to me, and she was so excited. Will you? I'll help. Well, you're going to have to, because I had never been on the auction committee. I had never been a part of it. So I'd attended, but I had never been a part of the committee. So I hadn't even seen any of the behind the scenes. So,
and the someone that asked was me.
Teresa asked. When Teresa asked, she sort of had to say yes. So.
And then began the OJT.
Yes. Although I am a manager by background, and I've done a lot of management in my life, and organization is, I hope, one of my strong suits. I'm pretty big picture, but I can be very detail oriented, and so I had some thoughts, but it does take close to a miracle to pull it off every year, and it takes a very large group, especially now. We went to a different venue, and with that we expanded the number of silent auctions items that we had, and the number of live auctions, I believe. So that first year, we had some pretty good success, netting over $60,000. And so that was a record. Mm-hmm. And last year, 2018, we went to a different venue, and this one turned out to be the perfect venue at the Marriott Park Hotel, University Park Hotel. And we, after learning some hard lessons the first year, 2017, what we did in 2018 is we put some subcommittees together so that there was a team responsible for silent auction. There was a small team assigned to live auctions. Our beloved Ms. Derringer over here has done the fundraising sponsorships pretty much single-handedly for the last several years, so she was willing to still do that. And then we had a couple of decorations and things like that, and then I took care of the ticket sales, the website. We used some new software and things like that, and anyway, it was a full team effort, but we took it up even further in terms of the quantity that we offered, the types of offerings that we had, and we set another record, and we netted $71,000.
Tell us about some of the offerings. I know that quite a few church members volunteered their homes for different types of events. There were trips, vacations. Talk to me about that.
So, and again, these were thoughts that had the previous people had put into place. We just kind of expanded on that, but so a lot of the items that we offer are what we call sign-up events, and they are either dinners or wine and cheese tasting, walk in Redview Gardens, something like that, where someone either volunteers their time or their home and food, and decides how many people they can accommodate, what the price will be, and then when you attend the auction, you simply sign up with your name and bidder number, and you're attending until it's full. We also have a number of silent auction, which is really fun too, because then you are bidding against the next person, and when it ends, the highest bidder wins that item. We've had artwork there's many members of our congregation that are very great artists, as I'm sure we all know, as well as some outside folks that we've had donate items. But we've also had a number of generous people, two of which are sitting here, donate trips every year. To a week, we have a timeshare that's not a specific location, and we can book anywhere. And so we've donated trips to Mexico, Palm Springs,
which we did
Hawaii,
last year.
which they did last year.
And the wine country, which we did the year before.
They did our wine country the year
before.
before.
Which was wonderful.
And this year we bought there. So,
Yes.
we get to go to Winter Park
Yes.
in Colorado, but not in the winter because I don't like winter. But those are very fun because that's a live auction, and that really generates a lot of excitement. It's very fun. I think it's a little more fun now because everyone's still sitting, drinking, eating their dessert, while the auctioneer is going around and trying to get people to up their bids. Jim DeBacchus did it a couple years in a row, not last year, but the 2 years prior to that. And in 2017, I gave him a sheet with the suggested starting bids. We had a budget for what we were hoping to get out of each trip. We knew the value, and so we knew where we kind of wanted to start. He just looked at the screen and saw that the value was, let's say, $1,800. Well, let's start at $1,900. And he managed to beat our budget that year by $10,000 just on those 11 live auction items. It was phenomenal.
So we've heard a lot about the fun involved and the planning involved, but let's be serious for just a moment. What are we funding?
What are we funding?
Teresa.
So, if you want the history of the auction, long ago it used to be that there would be a specific event or group that we were funding. Okay, so maybe Planned Parenthood or maybe something in the community. But over time, I think people rightly so said, we should be funding more programs at our church. And so that's what we've been doing. So we did have very special funding over the last 2 years. We were able to bring on our second minister early because some of the proceeds of the auction were going toward her salary. So that was a wonderful thing that we could do by devoting those. And now that is finished, that term, I understand it will go back to the general fund.
Mm-hmm.
And so, taking it a step further, what sorts of programs are benefiting from the fundraising efforts?
Every program within the church is benefiting. Teresa mentioned the second minister, which we absolutely need and love, and we're so grateful that she's here. But also religious education. We've been able to increase the music budget for things. We brought on a second music assistant director, and David Zabruski's amazing. And they've been able to bring a few more musicians into some of our Sunday services, outside musicians to add to the choir. But in addition, we're able to have more outreach, more programs within environmental ministry, films, speakers, things like that. So every facet of our congregation is impacted by the benefit of the auction and the proceeds that it generates.
Teresa, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us for this chat about the First Unitarian Church's annual auction and its fundraising efforts and the reason why we do it and those who benefit. So it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you doing this.